Welcome to the Wellness Esquire Podcast. I'm Ariella, and I'm so excited to share that Gwen Griggs and Whitney Harper have returned for another conversation that I think you're going to love. If you haven't yet listened to our first conversation, I recommend you do so. Gwen and Whitney are the founders of Advos Legal, a law firm built on a unique point system model instead of the billable hour, and the creators of Advos Pro, a community and framework designed to help lawyers transition from the traditional billable hour and misery grind to a more sustainable, value-based practice where the humans come first. While our first conversation focused more on the business side of their work, today's conversation is more about how Gwen and Whitney actually live those values. We talk about all the important stuff, like the out-of-office message, vacations, statement earrings, and designing systems that protect their time, energy, and personal lives, while also supporting their clients' needs. And we talk about the power of experimentation and why progress in law and wellness isn't about having perfect processes from day one. It's about the courage to fail forward and refine as you go. I'm so grateful to Gwen and Whitney for their transparency and for showing us what it looks like to build a practice that actually supports a life well lived. And by the way, very happy lawyers, very happy teammates, and very happy clients. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy. So thanks for chatting with me. I had so much fun talking to both of you last time, and we had focused more on kind of how you got together and what you are building with your firm model, and a bit about Advos Pro and the community. I want to get more into your personal stories, and we were just at the end starting to get into like wellness tips. And Gwen, you had pointed out that you'd seen me talk about some of my kind of optimization tactics and processes, and I love talking about all that stuff. So I think we'll focus more on all of that today, and then of course anything else that you both want to get into. I was thinking about, though, when I'd emailed you over the weekend to, just check in that this time still worked. Whitney, you had an away message up, maybe when you did too. And not surprisingly, it was Thanksgiving weekend. So you were noting, you're on vacation and not available. And yes. I just wondered, like, how has putting an away message up changed for you in this environment where you're on your own and you have well-being in mind? Oh, Gwen, you are muted.
I hear you.
There we go.
I was laughing because Whitney and I have a different philosophy on this. So
you're sure
like right out of the gate. Like,
yep.
Fantastic. Okay, let's get into it. Talk about vacations and away messages and all of that. Let's dig in.
Yeah, so it's funny. I didn't realize that people didn't like put out of office messages on. So to me, it's funny that you would like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want people to know I'm away. I'm like, I want them to know, like, this is not me being non-responsive. This is me being on vacation. Yeah. Right. And the people, so we'll start here. I am a big believer that you need to take vacation. And I used to think you need to like go away with your people. And I don't know, that's always true, right? Whatever vacation is for you, but you need to take time away from the work. Like you've got to shake things up. You've got to give yourself a different headset, have different experiences, like all the things. And life is meant to be lived, right? It's not just meant to be worked. And so finding those ways, whether that means, you're working from a different location and enjoying a different pace. I think sometimes that's a great like vacation from the normal. And sometimes it really is like, I'm going to put all the devices down and be not in them for a while. Big believer that we need to do that, and that we need to do it in a way that's healthy, both for the vacationer and for the people who have to keep the things going while you're gone. And we had a sort of epic disaster of that in our early days that really helped us to get clear on how to prepare well for vacation, how to think about like just recognizing that it's not just like I'm taking time off and I'm going and like, nope, you can't pretend that there isn't work that's going to fall on other people, and you can't pretend that people aren't going to need you in some way while you're gone. but how are you going to deal with that in a way that isn't dumping on anyone and isn't leaving people feeling like they're not being cared for, right? And so I think, when you think about the out of office message, being really conscious about letting people know why you're away, right? Not just like, oh, I'm not responding to you, but like, hey, I'm away, I'm having vacation. And frankly, the clients we choose to serve are people who understand being human. Like, and generally speaking, everybody's got like the outlier or the day where the generally very gracious client is not so gracious, or the person who believes that they are more important than your mental health and well-being and family time. But like, I think those are generally outliers in our client base. But
yeah,
it's like making sure that people know, and they, I think part of it's how you interact with your clients. You sort of train them around what really is critical and has to happen right now, and what is just the thing you wanted to give me information about, know that I have, and we can talk about it later. And then helping the internal team have a solid understanding of what's going on, so that they don't feel like they're in a can't win position if something does have to be handled while you're gone and you're not able to do it. I think all of those pieces are really important. And fun fact, if you're a Microsoft person, I don't know if this has always been the case. I've only noticed it fairly recently over the last year or so, but Microsoft actually lets you do an internal out of office message and an external out of office message. And so like, I have really enjoyed in my internal message, taking a chance to just say to the team, like, thank you. Really appreciate what you're doing to let me and my family go, in this case, gallivant around the North Georgia mountains, but whatever it is we're doing, grateful for you. And I like, does that mean that it makes it easier for them to do work if it has to spill over to them? I don't know. But I think it's a great opportunity just to say thanks, It
does give you like this great belly laugh in the moment. So, like you're
right.
sending whatever thing you're sending, you're in the middle of work, and I get back a like, thank you, rock stars, like really cheerful, positive message. And so it's a little bit of sunshine, right? And
yeah,
Whitney's also like an incredible writer. And so she like pulls together these words and these thoughtful messages. And so it's always a delight to get that.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, to me, everything you just described, well, in a nutshell, it's giving other attorneys and members of your team permission to be human and to take a break. And I have to imagine, even for those who are taking on whatever needs to be, addressed while you're taking vacation, being appreciated really matters. So if you were not acknowledging what they were doing, I'm sure, it's a different attitude than, okay, so I'm doing it this weekend so that someone will take care of me another time.
Yeah.
That matters. All right. Yeah. So Gwen, it sounds like you've got a different perspective.
Well, I think an element of it is very consistent with the way you think as well, which is it's all an evolution. It's all an experiment, and we're going to experiment, and some are going to work and some are not. And it's going to evolve. And when Whitney and I first partnered up, like I only had the experience of working with people who had the opposite, right? Of just like, when I'm gone, I'm gone. Like you guys figure it out. Like Whitney's comment about dumping, like that. Yes, that's the way it works in big law firms or in the corporations I was part of, right? Like the person left and you're expected to be resourceful and figure it out. And there's no transition in, transition out. There's no process around it. So Whitney, I think, is referring to one of our first Thanksgivings, and I was off, and a client called, and Whitney had no background and nothing to like make this work really well.
Like no context, right? Like, huh? You need what?
Right. And the client didn't love. Now I will say the client is still like amazing client of ours, really one of our best clients all these years later.
Who I talk to just about every other week. And we were talking this week about that incident, actually, like having a good laugh about it, that
10 years
like
ago,
how far we've come.
Right? Literally 10 years ago. So when I got back, Whitney was like, okay, we're going to create a process. and here's the way this process is going to work. Like 2 months out, first we're going to tell everybody that you're going to take time off. Then we're going to have a meeting and go through all the work. And then 2 days before, because things change, like this very specific way. And then reentry, what did we learn? What can we do better? Right? 10 years later, we do it. We do it much better.
Yeah.
So
I love so much of what you both just shared. And one of my favorite parts is that this was what could have been a really awesome experience with a client, still a client 10 years later, and you can laugh about it. And I think it's so useful to recognize that mistakes are how we end up growing. And,
yes.
It can feel so I mean, I've been in this phase. I'm growing my firm. And part of what's slowed me down that I've recently started to move through is I was afraid of, oh God, I can't bring anybody on until I have all of the perfect processes for everything that might possibly come up.
Yeah.
And
if someone else
would have
said, exactly. And what I was thinking about with your story is, when you came back and Whitney, you were like, all right, this happened. Don't want it to happen again. So we're going to need a process. And it makes me think of when you're out in the world and you see these very strange signs and you realize, oh, that sign is there because someone did something odd.
Yes.
And that's why you have the sign. It didn't just it's not like people sat there and just came up with every possible scenario something could go sideways. It happened. Yeah. So we develop.
I say that in the contract world, right? If you get someone's form contract, it's an archaeology dig. You're like, oh, there's a story around
that thing happened.
Page provision, right? That is so out of context. Mm-hmm. Like, tell me the story. Let's think about what happened, and is this the best way to solve it? But absolutely.
Any other learnings or tips that have come out of gearing up and preparing your team for you each or others to be on vacation? Because I think this idea of going on vacation and taking time for yourself, it's pretty easy. Well, I think for people who are, geared up to be thinking like we are, that, oh, we're humans and we should take a break. But then I think the next step is, okay, but how? How can I actually do that? So what does that look like for you now that you've been practicing and improving your systems over the last 10 years or so?
So Gwen, you have to take this one first because you've had some really good practice lately.
I was going to say, so just comparison, right? I tried to take a day off in Thanksgiving time 10 years ago, and it didn't go very well. And it has taken 10 years, but the end of September, early October, I took 2 weeks off completely, went to France. I've never taken 2 weeks off. Right. There was no need for me to log into my computer at all. Every now and then I would peek, but I took the app off my phone so that I wouldn't be tempted to check my Outlook while I was traveling. And we set up systems to some degree, because we have these repeat clients. I was just making sure for about 6 months before I left, right? Understand 2 weeks, solid 2 weeks, I'm off. And we had a deal that was really trying to close before I left. It didn't close, but everyone on the deal team knew Gwen is gone and you're not getting anything from me for 2 solid weeks. So you'll close at the end. And it closed at the end of October, not just because of my role, but it's just they tried to close in August, September, right? End up in October. We also have a paralegal on our team who had access to my email box. And so that was my solve. It's funny, like the seeds that get planted in your brain. I subscribe to a whole bunch of things. They end up getting filtered, so I don't have to read them. But I had this weird, I don't want the junk emailers to know I'm out of the office. I don't know. I don't know why that sticks with me, but it sticks with me. But we have a paralegal who went in the box, made sure that So I had more confidence that not just did people know I wasn't there, but there was a human who was making sure that things were getting taken care of and bubbling up to Whitney if, and I left on a Wednesday and one of our clients received an LOI to sell their company on Thursday. So Whitney got to negotiate that from start to finish.
Which is actually work I love. And it's a client I love. And like, that was great.
But the
and I
irony
can tell you,
I've been telling people for 6 months.
Yeah.
That's the day that, one of our largest clients gets an LOI. So
what I can tell you is that Gwen was really, truly, fully off, because as we get this LOI done, and it's, one of her favorite clients too. And I'm like, there are several things going on, and we've been partnered for 10 years now. Like I know this human, and I know, like, if she doesn't know the end of the story, like, her brain's going to keep spinning about it. So I don't want her like spinning like trying not to look at the emails and, and worrying and whatever. So I like send her this, book of a text, like, okay, here's where we are with that deal. And here's this other thing is done. And this other thing is done. And, I've got it. Just wanted you to know so that you can go, like, do your thing. I get crickets back, right? Absolute crickets. And I'm like, okay, well, either she's having the time of her life, or like, we're breaking up. I don't know. She never doesn't respond to me, right?
I'm guessing it was the former. You were having the time of your life and had
a lot of rosé.
It's 6 hours later, right? It was Saturday afternoon and 67 degrees, and I discovered rosé, and so I was having a very lovely time, and yes, did not.
As you should.
As you should. So, okay, you took 2 whole weeks off, and you were just a person. What did that do for you as just yourself, and then for your practice when you came back?
For me, I would say, so we went to the south of France, right? And as we walked around, and we didn't overschedule, which has also been my habit. Like I vacation the way I work, right? Which is every single minute is scheduled, and I'm going to make sure I get the most out of today and this. Right?
I find it very stressful because you had to like do it right.
Right. And this time I was like, I'm not going to do that. We're going to plant ourselves in this city, and we're going to walk around and have espresso and then stop and have lunch and be completely unscheduled. And our experience of the culture there is that's how everyone lives. They live. And that was my message to my children. I was like, they have this human pace that I haven't experienced, because I've had this experience of like, we've got to pack everything in and use every minute. And so absolutely brought that back of like, I'm not starting my day. And it's imperfect, but I bought an espresso machine this weekend.
Hey.
And like the ritual of making an espresso instead of sticking the Keurig in, right? Like the ritual of walking and just enjoying and making more fresher foods, right? And resting or walking in the afternoon. And then just like literally every week, every day. One of my favorite books is Winning the Week, which is
writing that
practice.
down.
Yeah, this practice of every week looking back, what worked, what didn't work, what do I want to make sure I'm going to have happen this next week, and what can I say no to, right? I know things are going to come in, so I have to look at that calendar and say, what am I going to say no to? How am I going to say no more often, so that the rest and the space and the roominess to be creative and to solve problems is there. Yeah, absolutely.
Gwen, I think it's so interesting. Like you said, you used to vacation the way you worked, and now you've had this like shift to starting to work more the way you vacationed, like more of the life that you experienced on that vacation, which I think is so healthy.
Yes.
So healthy.
Yeah. And I would say like work the way we are actually as humans designed to work.
Yeah.
And I think about even the hourly billing model, right? Like even it's a habit that's so in me, it's hard to completely break. And so I'll look at something and I'll think, okay, 15 minutes, I've got 15 minutes. I can do something in 15 minutes. Right. And sometimes I do, but pausing enough to say, oh, or maybe I just breathe and see some fresh air for 15 minutes and then show up in a different way instead of I like 8 to 10 hours a day and you're tracking every minute of it. Like, that's not human. That's not how humans work.
So it's also not humane.
Agreed. How should humans work?
I think they have to listen really well to their energy. It sounds a little woo, but right. Like, do I have the energy?
Yeah.
That's not woo at all. And if we think that's woo, that's a whole other thing that we've got to work on as a culture and as an industry.
Yes. Yes.
As I've started to pay more attention to the value of my energy and pay less attention to time, everything has started to shift for me.
Yeah.
Massive difference.
Yes. And when do I have energy and what lights me up and what doesn't light me up? And just literally listening to your body of like, I don't want to do this thing. Well, that's a sign, right? That we should listen to, not just power through.
Oh, so we shouldn't just power through everything, huh?
That's a habit we need to break, right?
Yeah. What about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think both of you have talked about this misery competition that the industry
lawyers are trained to.
Yeah. So talk about that and your personal experiences with the misery competition and recognizing that maybe it's not a great approach.
I think it's really interesting. I notice it even in our partnership, right? As we talk to each other about our days, like everybody's going to have their moment where they go down kind of a downward spiral, right? And I think we've gotten much more comfortable, and it has taken time, right? Even for people who value wellness and wholeness and vacation time and time with family and exercise and all those things. I would say in the first half of us as Advos Legal, like, we valued those things and we still had these well-worn talk tracks, right? Those kind of the heuristics, right? The thing that you just keep going back to, that is the way we talk about it, where it was like, well, no, I mean, yes, I've had a lovely day, but I can't let you know that. Right? I need to find the things to tell you how hard I'm working. And it was this, like, I need to convey the misery so that you believe I'm pulling my weight, or that I'm giving it my all, or whatever. And it takes real time, and also peer modeling, or seeing other people break that cycle and not apologize for it. Right? That shift, I don't think you can make that shift really well on your own, as easily as you can anyway, with other people in your culture who you've chosen to surround yourself with. Even if you're a solo practitioner, I think having other people who you connect with, who think differently about it and who are willing to say it. Right? When Gwen and I talk, we have a couple of times a week that we have set aside just to connect. And so, around 4:00 on Mondays and Wednesdays, we're connecting. And some days it's like, this is hard. I'm having a hard day. But we're also talking about the lovely parts of our day and the human parts of our day, and the supporting each other and saying, I want you to have the time you need, and I want you to have the support you need, and whatever, and really sitting in that together. I think that's super important. And then, it comes out in your conversations with other lawyers from other firms or other professionals in other places. And I think it attracts the right kind of clients too, the clients who want you to be healthy and who understand that they're going to get better value and a richer relationship when they value you as a human, and vice versa. So
I was thinking about in our CEO circles, right? Our 4 law firm owners, right? Everyone in that group is a solo or small firm owner.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it about 1.5 years now, and we built, like, people know, they'll start to say something and they'll say, I know what you're going to say, right? Because they know that we know it can be different, right? But it's hard for them to make that shift until they're reminded again, and then they think about it for themselves and they realize, I'm taking on this client that actually isn't a great fit. That's what you're going to say. You're going to say that the reason I'm having this problem is because I said yes to this client I shouldn't have said yes to. And it's the repetition of that helps us learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did the two of you start identifying, what your values and priorities were for yourselves and for the firm, and how to start adjusting the way you were even communicating with each other when you went into this and you're like, okay, on the surface, we know that, well-being and wholeness and, our humanity is important. And yet we've got all these years behind us of not really behaving that way. And so we still have these habits and inclinations toward not the way we want to be, but it's still the way we are. And we've got so much fear around, someone thinking that, you're not working your ass off or all of that. So what helped you make those adjustments?
I'll start, and I'll say that I spent about 2.5 years before we launched the firm at a workplace wellness company. I think I may have mentioned that in our last call. And so for me, I had a long history of being a very young lawyer, learning a certain way, being surrounded by people who behave the same way. And then I had this moment of seeing someone build a really successful company grounded in the idea that that isn't how we behave. And I watched the impact of that on the humans. Yes, people never left, right? If you got a job there, you were going to stay because you hadn't experienced a culture anywhere else. But then also the profit side of that, right? If people come and they want to stay and they don't want to leave, and you're not always hiring and you don't have the churn and your clients love you, right? Like it makes more profit. Like, so just like holistically, every perspective, that's just a good business decision. But it breaks the idea that you must work hard to run a good business. And so, yes, I knew it at some level, and I even knew it, experientially at some level. And still, in practice, it's easy to get sucked back in a circle of other humans who have this belief that it's working hard, it's working all the time, it's fast turnarounds, even when they're not. And I'll also add having Whitney as a partner, right? Because Whitney, like, she's just like, yeah, that's not that important. It's not going to come in front of the thing that is important to me and my family. And so watching her stand in that, and the clients still love her, they don't run away, right? Like, when you see that, you're like, oh, actually, all those times that I thought if I did that, we wouldn't be successful. Like, I was just wrong.
Yeah, well, it's fear, right? I think there's that fear. Ariella, you hit it on the nose earlier. Like, there is a fear-based reaction that until you sort of, your nervous system has reason to believe that the fear is unfounded, it's really hard to convince yourself otherwise. So I think that it's worth recognizing and calling it out for what it is, because I think we as lawyers don't admit to fear very easily, right? That's weakness. And so we instead convince ourselves that it is being driven, or it is being a high performer.
Oh, yeah, that's never good enough.
Yeah, we can give all sorts of really nice names to that inclination. But really, it's just like you trying to grind yourself into the ground and not, I think sort of your number one job is put on your own oxygen mask first, right? Like you've got to take care of yourself or you're not any good to anybody else. And I think we as lawyers, we as women in particular, are not great at that.
So it's, one thing to say, put your oxygen on, mask on first. How do you start doing that when that's not your default? Did you have specific experiences that kind of knocked something over your head that just made you go, oh man, I really got to change how I'm operating? How did you start to shift?
One of the things I was thinking about earlier is as the owners of the firm, I remember earlier on in our history, Gwen making a comment sort of observationally, like we were very committed to making sure our team was whole and happy and healthy. And that meant, the team's going on vacation. We're going to step in and make sure everything is buttoned up and handled and that nobody will bother them. And we're, babying them about taking their vacation. And then when it was time for us to vacation, like it was a big, heavy lift. And I know, I think Gwen probably felt it more than me, that it was more work to go on vacation than it was worth. And so that I recall sort of viscerally hearing that and going, oh, this is a problem. Like this is not, the idea of owning your firm is not so that you make everything in your own life harder. And that seems to be kind of the default setting for a lot of us. And so I think sometimes there's, you learn more from the body feeling of doing it the way you don't want than you do from anything else, right? You can read all the books you want, you can hear other people's stories, but that full body reaction to this isn't, that's not what I want is pretty important to listen to.
And I do think there's some books that have, like, for me at least, really were impactful. Like I did have some health issues in the early 2000s that made me question just the advice I was getting from doctors about how you treat certain things. And I was like, actually, I'm going through this really, really stressful time and no one is asking me how stressed I am. But my the voice inside my head said, I think when I get through this, like this symptom is going to resolve it. You don't have to take my gallbladder. I think we're going to be okay. And so, but resisting the advice we were getting from a doctor, that was tough to do. But listening to your own, to Whitney's point, what I was really doing was listening to me and knowing what was happening in my life. It also then makes you seek out the books that are going to answer those questions. And for me, the book that came into my life is Tony Schwartz wrote a book called The Way We're Working Isn't Working. And he pulled all this science and studies and math and again, profit, right? Because I'm not about running, a business that barely pays its bills, right? That's not the point. That's not healthy either. And in his book, and this was 2008, right? This was a very long time ago. Now we talk about it like everybody knows it. It's not novel at all, but it was very novel as I was in a corporate job reading this book that said, lack of sleep will kill you, right? And if we actually create some healthy boundaries, Whitney's point earlier of if we have off time, then our on time is more creative and productive and problem solving and actually can be more profitable. And they had this study of Sony that had two divisions, one that said, you're going to reply to all the emails whenever you're going to reply. And one that said, we're going to stop at 6:00 on Friday and you're not going to read your email until Monday. And of course, the punchline was the one that had boundaries was more profitable. And so then when you start seeing examples of like, it's not just pie in the sky and Pollyanna and wouldn't that be nice? It's companies have adopted this and they've proven different results. The funny thing though is if you're selling hours, that doesn't work because you still need to have as many hours as you possibly can. So that's part of the reason we don't sell hours, right? But that was one of the books that really had an impact.
I am looking forward to reading that. I really appreciate that you brought up the health challenges piece of this. It reminded me of when I have a very complex health history. I was born with some challenging stuff and things got much more complicated as life went on. I'm pretty sure everyone in my law school knew that I was, had a really complex health situation. And I remember somebody asking me as a 1L, how does stress impact your health? And I said, oh, it doesn't.
Aren't they cute?
Exactly. But at the time when I said that, I wasn't, that's what I had, I think, two primary thoughts around it. One was, I had grown up with these health challenges that had been really hard to get answers about. And so I was so afraid of anyone thinking, that my health problems weren't real. And so I didn't want anyone to think, oh, you're just, it's just a mental health thing. You're actually fine. You're just making this stuff up, which is not the case. And so I was afraid of having anything like stress tied to, the reason that I was having all these crazy organ problems and chronic pain and crazy stuff. And I genuinely had no idea that stress could impact health. I'd never not had health challenges, probably also never not been stressed. So I didn't know how they went together. Right. And I was so afraid of anyone having any opportunity to question also if I could operate as a lawyer. Right. So all of these things combined, the answer simply had to be no.
Yeah.
There was no alternative. And when I started to discover many years later, I think there might be some truth to there being actually like science about stress impacting your health. Now, right. Like it actually took me a lot to accept that, because I had all of these two sort of challenges in my head that, I was really unwilling to acknowledge that, and recognizing the connection was hard and critical.
Yeah. And I think our profession kind of suffers from this single-mindedness about how we have to work. Right? I think there are so many people out there who are entrepreneurial or who are in different businesses who have seen different business setups, if you will, right? Like different structures, different norms, just different ways of thinking about what results you want. Let's just start here. Even thinking about what is the result you want, like what results do you want from your life's work? And I don't just mean the dollars, although I do mean the dollars, but also like, how do you want to feel? And what do you want the days and the hours to look like? And all of those things. And like, I don't think our profession it ever occurred to most of us that we get to like think about those things and make decisions about them and ask questions about them. And so, Ariella, you're sitting there and somebody says like, how does stress affect you? And you're like, it can't, because there's only one way to do this job. And it is like all out and all the hours of all the days. And like, if I have anything left, I've done it wrong. Yeah. And what is that? It's not good.
I find some irony in this too. So I'm early 30s, 2 young children. That's when I'm having some of these health issues, and also going through like the most stressful little 6 months of my professional career. When I was 40, for my 40th birthday, I went to Miraval and did this equine experience where you approach a horse, and my husband has been around horses, so I watched him do it. Then I to clean its hoof, and I did it because I watched him do it with great confidence, and I walked up and did it with great confidence. And then I looked around and realized that no one else had that level of confidence, and the horse wasn't picking its foot up. And it was such an aha moment, or hoof up, that if a horse can feel my energy and my confidence, like, right? Like, how many humans have felt like I had this moment where I was like, the stress is affecting me, but I'm able to like manage it all, and it doesn't actually ripple and affect anybody else. And then you have this moment and you're like, oh, hold on. if I'm not managing this stress, everyone else in the room knows it, right? In some form or fashion, is experiencing it in some form or fashion. Is that who I really want to be? Is that the relationship I want to be? So it's, you almost have to have the experience to prove to yourself and your body that, like, yes, we are emotional creatures and people can feel that energy and that emotion. So to Whitney's point of put your oxygen mask on, right? Our responsibility is to show up as best as we can and also human and know that we are not always at our best, like, and forgive ourselves from that too.
What does that look like for both of you? When you're showing up as just yourselves and you're not trying to pretend that you really are always at the top of your game, because we try, and I talk about having all these tools that help me optimize my performance no matter what, but that doesn't mean I'm actually always at my best. It means that on a day where I've got all these factors that are impacting me and I don't feel amazing, that I'm able to operate better than I otherwise would.
Yeah. Our COO, Sarah, our COO has this tremendous one-liner that she'll whip out for you whenever you're kind of in that space of like, I just don't have much in the tank right now. Whether it's I'm low on energy or I'm just not like thinking crisply right now or whatever it is, right? She will say, if you have 20% and you gave it 100%, babe. And I love that. Even if you have 20% and you give it 15%, right? But like recognizing that it's not fair to ask ourselves to be at the top of our game every day. It's just not fair. It's not realistic.
It's also just not true, right? Like that to me, that's back to the fallacy of we're going to crank out, 50 hours a week that we're going to document. Like those hours are not the same. And it is not a true statement to say that they are, because we're humans that power up and power down and have human experiences and loss and grief and struggle and all of those things that because we're human, we feel, and they're going to impact us. Didn't sleep well for 100 million different reasons, right? That's going to impact how we're doing. But I think the other thing is committing to habits, right? And honoring those habits and understanding, like I've gotten to a place now where I know I use a tonal machine, and I know that if I don't work out, like where I'm pushing my muscles to the limit a couple times a week, like I'm going to start getting kind of irritable, right? Like if I don't get outside and move my body, I'm not going to, have energy, which is, it takes breaking the idea that I have to spend every minute working to say I'm going to invest this time. But then when you see the results and you realize, oh, I actually can bring different energy because I did that.
I love that. What is a tonal machine?
It's basically like it's on the wall, has these pulleys, and it's a strength training. But for me, who loves data, it gives me a strength score, right? And it tells me whether I'm getting better or not. And it remembers all of the things that I can't possibly, like, 31 pounds and each lever. I'm like, I can't remember what the setting should be. Please remember that for me. So yes, I'm in love with it. But it also then is teaching me, like, we're going to travel, and I'm like, okay, so now I can make a simple routine, and I know where I should be, right? Because I've now got more reps and more experience on it.
Yeah.
Ariella, I want to know some of your, like this, you have like committed to the wellness part. So I want to pick your brain on what your routine is. And...
So this part of my story in a nutshell, well, I guess there's kind of two pieces, at least. I'll focus on two. One is I got a concussion, my 6th concussion, in, I think it was 2018. Yeah, I don't recommend it. And
what are you doing?
Are you a boxer by hobby? Like, what are we doing here, friend?
So this gets to the complex health history. I'm going to try to simplify this. I was born with a connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And some of what that comes with is, hold Hold on, we have a knocking at the door. Hopefully that will stop. So
we have an edit button, you told me. So
we do have an edit button. My husband's going to deal with it. So I was born with this connective tissue disorder, and it, if you think about how important it is for a building to be constructed well, same thing goes for a person. So my body was not constructed really optimally. So my connective tissue, which is supposed to be like tight lattice like this,
right,
flimsier, more like this. So that can lead to quite a few things, including it being really easy to get injured, and your nervous system having trouble kind of sending and understanding signals, and just things don't operate ideally. And your connective tissue holds together your organs. So if the thing that's holding everything in you together is kind of floppy, you can imagine the cascading effect. So that can lead to, I think I mentioned, chronic pain, and also a poor proprioception, which is your body's awareness, your awareness of where you are in space. When you don't know where you are in space, a lot can go poorly, which can include, bumping into things and seeming like the clumsiest person on the world and having all sorts of bizarre injuries and, you name it, kind of issues going on with your organ systems. And this connective tissue disorder, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, often also has all these different comorbidities with different body systems with all sorts of challenges. So that, along with related vision issues, in a nutshell, led to a bunch of head injuries. This one was, I was putting stuff away in a kitchen cabinet, getting ready for friends to come over for a board game night, and I just hit my head on the counter. As I was getting up, my husband heard a scream. He came in. Anyways, I refused to believe that it was a concussion. I should have known. I'd done this plenty of times. But I was early on in my career and felt like, ooh, I haven't succeeded yet. And I'm not exactly where I want to be. And I've already had been explicitly and implicitly guided to never tell anyone about my health. So I did not feel like I could just go and say, I have a concussion. I didn't even want to admit it to myself. So I tried, after about a day and a half, I did acknowledge it was a concussion, but I then tried to work through it for about a month. That was a bad idea. I made it worse. I just couldn't do it. And it was the first thing I'd been unable to push through in my life. So that was an identity crisis of who am I if I can't push through everything? And I was forced to really take time off. And part of my kind of recovery process included working with a neurologist who integrated into his protocols well-being oriented practices like meditation and mindfulness and things like that. And I was at the time like, okay, I will try anything. I have to get back to life. And I'm bored out of my freaking mind just lying here unable to do anything. And I was a mess. And then I started to discover that, I'm actually improving. And it seems like when I take better care of myself from a well-being perspective, not a try to fix my health problems perspective, I'm also more productive. That's weird. And so that's really where the orientation around well-being stemmed from. It felt very forced initially, and then I discovered, when I actually care for myself as a person, things seem to get better. Weird. And then the more kind of tool-oriented, I'd been trying to develop tools for my whole life because I was born into a complex body. But what's now become really foundational to the way I operate is about 3 years ago, I started working with a neuroperformance trainer, which is a type of training that no one's ever heard of. And I had been, again, really sick and was looking for what's something I haven't tried before. And I found my way to this incredible guy named Steve Madama. And he does what I consider to be science-based magic. And it's essentially athletic training of the nervous system. Oh. And The best way I've come to describe it sort of in more detail is it's like if you were to combine every form of physical therapy, occupational therapy, vision therapy, vestibular training, which is your balance system, personal training, just training of every system in your body, head to toe, inside out. That's what this is. And I started it to get out of a really, really horrendous flare. And it's not only the thing that helped me feel healthy for the first time, but it's also now what allows me to be so wildly productive that I get questions from people all the time of, how do you do everything you do? You've got multiple businesses and you're starting this new thing. And like, how is it possible? Some of it's how I'm built. I'm very driven, and I'm naturally a very organized person. And I really like efficiency and systems. But the other part of it is processes and systems and strategies and a toolbox. And so I've got all of these tools that are very nervous system oriented that help me to show up as well as I possibly can under any circumstance. And again, I started this kind of training program to help me get out of a really bad flare, and it did that, and made me healthier than ever. But it's also now filled with the tools that I can use for a day, frankly, even like today, where I was wiped. I just learned to surf over the weekend, and I've got a lot going on, and got some difficult personal news this morning. Somebody passed away. And so it's been actually a difficult day, but I've got these tools that just like, I've got my resistance bands right here. I've got something, another strap around my feet because I benefit a lot from doing isometrics. So there's a lot of, most of us, and I used to be in this bucket, don't really have the awareness of the role of our nervous system. And our nervous system basically directs everything about the way we show up in a day, whether you're talking about your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health. We're talking about stress, anxiety, depression, just how well you're performing in whatever aspect of your life you're trying to perform in. And, I started it to not be in pain and have my organ systems work properly. And it worked for that. And now it's, okay, well, how can I be sharper? How can I be clearer? How can I work faster and more efficiently? How can I move out of anxiety? How can I avoid anxiety? Just, when something happens, what can I kind of really quite quickly and simply move through it instead of just being like, oh, well, that sucks. Nothing I can do about that. That's not a mentality that I align with. And so this just gives me all these things of, okay, so one of my go-tos is I do all these hand exercises. And with the hand exercises and all sorts of other things, if you ever see me walking around the world, I look weird. I'm doing stuff. I'm doing like vestibular drills, and I'm like moving my body in all these different ways. And some of that is very specific to the challenges that I experienced because of my health background. But all of it's also stuff that anyone can do. And, regardless of your personal circumstances, we all have a nervous system. No one's nervous system is operating perfectly. We've all got room for improvement. And I think it's just the coolest thing ever for you to be able to say, well, okay, so your hands have a tremendous impact on sort of the way your brain is able to operate, is maybe this just a simple way to put it, but there's I can send you information about.
I was going to say, is there like a YouTube
links?
Where's the beginner?
This is actually another business that I'm developing because I get so many questions about this, and I love talking about it because
no one knows about it.
No one knows about it,
right?
And no one wants to feel like crap. But most people don't know that they don't have to feel the way they do. So I don't find I'm amazing at explaining this, but the hand thing is, there's this concept of a homunculus, which is, there's a kind of futuristic caricature looking weird creature that has very oddly proportioned body parts. And they're oddly proportioned in such a way that kind of demonstrates how much of your sort of brain capacity is being directed to those parts of your bodies. So your hands and your tongue take up a lot of that brain power. And so when you can get your hands and your tongue working better, it frees up a lot of space for your brain to do other things so it doesn't have to work as hard. So
Interesting.
I have homework tonight. Like I'm going to be Googling and researching.
I'm like always doing something, with my hands. My trainer, I mean, he's got, he works with everyone from professional athletes to Parkinson's patients, and he'll have them, if it's the right thing for them, because everyone's different, running and doing their training, their marathons or whatever with hand figure eights or, whatever it is. And so these are some of the things that I'll do sometimes in a meeting or in a podcast under the camera, or to prep myself or to help me wake up. I mean, this is the way I work out, but it's also just part of my lifestyle. So as soon as I get up, I start doing things. I mean, by the time I'm brushing my teeth, I've started. And it helps me function. And not just it helps me function, baseline if I'm having a really, really rough day. And then it just gets me, to reach for the stars levels on more days than would probably be realistic for most, because I've just got these tools. And, one of the things that I've found most beneficial from working with my trainer is learning about how important rest is. And this comes up so often with him, and it just came up. We work virtually. We came up yesterday. I'm doing this thing with him called blood flow restriction training. And you put these, actually I have them next to me. You put these straps either around your legs or your arms. You should do this with a trainer. And it restricts blood flow, and it's really hard. It's really cool. It's really interesting. And a big part of why he's doing it with me, most people do it for strength training, and we're doing that too. But for me in particular, it's helping me with interoception. So my natural, because of some of the stuff I was born with, my natural awareness of what I'm feeling and what's going on inside of me it's very hard for me to understand. So having training protocols that actually help me understand proprioception, so this is where my elbow is and it's connected to the arm, and that's where a wrist is and that's how it's supposed to move, and then interoception of there's a feeling inside and this is what it is, and this is so anyways, with this training, there's a protocol with it. So you're putting these straps on. There's a process for making sure that you have the right level of resistance. Too much is unsafe. Doing it right is safe. And you're doing reps of 13, 15, 15, 15 with intentional rest in between. And I tend to not be the most patient person. And so he will say, stop. You haven't done your full rest period in between these reps. You have to, or the set. The rest is really important. And that's been a big part of me learning for the rest of life how important it is. And one of the other big things I've learned from him is how important it is to make mistakes as part of the learning process, because our neuroplasticity actually happens from making mistakes. Understanding the right level of challenge is actually key to learning. So if we're never making mistakes, we're really not learning that much or at all. And if we're making too many mistakes, we're actually just overwhelming our systems. So understanding the value of mistakes in the learning and growth process is huge. And my comfort with that really came from this kind of training.
That is all fascinating. Really?
Isn't it so cool?
Yeah.
So I just, my husband actually this weekend started building for me what will eventually be this platform where I share videos and more instructions around the training that I do. Because I, for years, kind of sort of casually shared videos on social media, and I will get messages from people from all around the world of like, I mean, two of my favorites messages are a mom in Finland sent me a message and said, you know, her husband had started rejoining their family activities because the tongue exercises that I had shared had helped his pain go down so much.
Wow.
And I know. And there was a 9-year-old who found me through her mom on TikTok. And they sent me this like really just such a sweet message. And I was like, does she want to FaceTime? And so I, you know, made friends with this little 9-year-old. And my video, one of them in particular was of me. Well, I would share these training videos, not of just me learning, not just of me showing, hey, this is how you do it, but also this is the process of me going from, I don't know what's going on here, to understanding how to do it. And for someone in a body like mine, our natural sense of the world can be different. And so one of the videos that I have is my trainer is teaching me knee mobility circles or knee mobility drills. And one of his, I think, favorite ways to train me is to just show me what he wants me to do and then just wait and see what happens. Because that then helps him understand what work we have to do.
Right. If there's
exactly. Yeah. And so he showed me what the movement was, and I did something very different and very strange that involved far more than just the knees. It was a whole hip thing, and it was wrong. And his response was something like, oh boy, we've got a lot of work to do. Yeah. And then by the end of the video and our training session, like I understood what the movement was supposed to be. But anyways, I'd shared this in other videos. And so this 9-year-old saw someone who'd made it, you know, like lawyer, living a life, married, you know, very happy. And also like, this is, you know, so I was an example of someone who'd gone from, you know, really tremendous pain to feeling good in my body, still figuring it out. But it showed her that the body she was born in was like, it didn't have to just be like, you know, a disaster. Yeah. And it started to give her strength of like, oh, okay, I can get strong and this doesn't have to be the end of the world. And okay, I can learn to navigate this. So anyways, so I'm getting more structure around how to share the videos because like everyone wants to know really how to share better in context.
Well, and I think you have like a specific, right, like medical experiences that said my body's different. But I actually, the corollary that is coming into my mind is as lawyers, the people who choose lawyering as their profession, they probably believed I'm super logical, right? I am really logical. My logic and my ability to like problem solve is so great. Like I don't have to pay attention to all these emotions, right? And so I think there's a competitiveness, there's a logic behavior, there's a drive, like, you know, and there's almost a natural disconnection with like the physicality and the emotion of being a human.
Oh yeah.
Like if you just think of a subset of humans, right, that said, I want to be a lawyer, right? They're like, I'm going to take on other people's emotions because I'm so logical, right? I can do that, right? And
which is, by the way, highly illogical to say, but there we are.
It is, but I do think that people, like, that's what they believe. Their self-concept is that I'm so logical, I can take on everybody else's emotions. And so I think you have like the actual medical, but you also chose a profession, right? Where you have a lot of different people that you come into contact that have had some similar experiences of, right. And I mean, again, back to the hours, right? I believe I can operate just like a machine. And for 60 hours a week, I can deliver the exact same thing because I'm that good. Right. And not listening to the humanity of it.
Yeah.
Well, and I thought, so interesting parallels as you were talking, you know, we talked in the beginning about sort of how we learned from the mistakes we made. and the body feeling of the mistakes was the thing that like helped us to understand what wasn't supporting our overall humanity and wellness in our firm. And I think, same thing that you're saying about the ability to learn muscle movements and physical things by making the mistake and not over mistaking, right? Like not overwhelming yourself with this isn't working. And I think like that's such an important balance and something to be valued that we as lawyers do not inherently value, right? Making mistakes, but also taking the time to have the conversation about what that mistake means. How do we not repeat it the same way next time? Is also not something that the profession, inherently does, and is super important. Because I think if you make the mistake, you keep making the mistake, you start to believe that the mistake is the only possible outcome. And that doesn't have to be true. And then the other thing you said that I love the parallel of to the kind of business principles piece, that I think this is just true all over the place, is that there are a lot of things in our lives that I talk about it in terms of taking up your RAM, right? Like they're occupying so much of your brain's processing power because they're just there. And it doesn't have to be that way. You actually can build exercises for yourself or routines, or I think about in terms of our business where we've built systems or checklists or automations so that I don't have to remember all the steps. I can have a place to go back and I can confidently know that I can stop trying to remember all the steps because I have a place. Or even just having like the single source of truth, the one place where all of your to-do list lives, and knowing that you can put things there so you don't have to keep trying to keep them on the mental to-do list, and can free up your brain to be creative, to get rest, to be sharper, to do the stuff that's really higher level. I think I loved hearing that from the perspective of your medical challenges and journey, and the parallel to the fact that it's actually just true in life. Right?
1,000% true. And one of the things that's been most fascinating for me is when I started posting on LinkedIn, it was sometime during the pandemic, and I was posting about being an attorney with this complex and quote unquote rare disease story. And I felt really nervous to do it because I'd been guided to, never tell anybody your story ever. And I was immediately flooded. And when I did it because I just felt like I wasn't showing up as myself. And it's not like I was at the time looking to just walk into meeting rooms and say, hey, let's talk about me before we get into the purpose of the meeting. But I was, I wasn't showing up as myself. And I had felt that, man, it would have been really valuable for me to have someone I could have looked to see, okay, like I know that I can do whatever I set my mind to, but like, has anyone done this before? Because it kind of seems like no one has, and I'd like some guidance, just like some support. And I fortunately am a twin, and my twin sister has similar health stuff, and she was in med school when I was in law school.
Oh my gosh,
so
that's amazing.
Yeah. But I just thought, well, maybe there's one other person out there who would benefit from knowing that there's also me. And so that's why I posted. And as soon as I did, I was immediately flooded with so many stories. And I discovered, believe it or not, I am not the only lawyer with health challenges. And as you said, that so many of these lessons that I, had learned through my medical journey, and then subsequent really to that post, and then more recently with everything that I sought out to learn through my neuroperformance training, initially for my health, it all matters for work, and we have this crazy thing in the industry, which I think is starting to dissipate, where we think, you have to be this person at work and this person in the rest of your life. And that's just not how it works. And when we can recognize that the things that you're learning in your personal life also overlap, this is like, Gwen, what you were talking about with your bringing your vacation self into work. I mean, I love that because we're one person and we just happen to also have jobs.
Yes. That concept of work-life balance that presumes work is one thing and life is another thing. And they don't exist together. Like, no, it's just humaning. And that human does things like rest and play and work. And,
How do you play?
So I really do enjoy just being outside. And even we work from home most days of the week. And I've shifted where my office is on our property. And so I'm outside less now. But one of my favorite things is just like, even when I'm working, can I sit outside and work? Can I be out in fresh air? And that means I'm going to get up and notice. Like, I'm going to walk around and see the butterfly on the hibiscus, or like I'm going to say hello to the neighbor's chickens and hope they don't chase me, whatever it is. But noticing, and I like, that is just like a super easy thing during my work that lets my brain play a little, that I really enjoy, just that integrated bit. But then, anytime I could be out on the water, if I can get out on the boat or go for a paddle or whatever, I definitely am going to take the chance to do that. I'm taking up golf, which has been fun. I took golf lessons when I was a baby lawyer and realized pretty quickly that in that environment, like, who has time for golfing? What is this very strange subset of people who have figured out how to golf and lawyer? And with small children, like that wasn't a great fit. But where I am in life now, my kids are adult and near adult. And so like that frees up some time for golf and all that stuff, but traveling and, finding opportunities for adventure and just connecting with my people. That's my play. That and like reading. I read as much as I can.
I love your nature focus. So I mentioned we're in Costa Rica right now, and we're in an area where we're just surrounded by monkeys so much of the time. And I've had moments in my office. I'm usually sitting right outside. And I've had moments where I just like, there's a monkey. And so I just pause what I'm doing and I go and just stare at the monkey. Not stare at that. I'm standing still. I'm jumping up and down, squealing that there's a monkey. It sounds like I'm cool.
Love it.
And then I go right back to work with so much excitement.
Yes.
And I'm super focused, but like I've had this, 2-minute break where I'm just so energized. And that then helps me get back and actually move faster.
Yep.
Yeah.
How do you play, Gwen?
Yeah. I think the answer to that is it depends on the season, right? Like literally the season of life and then the season of the year. And Whitney made the point of us working at home, and it is hard for me to remember that I spent most of my career getting dressed in heels, going downtown, sitting in an office on the 42nd floor, right? Going out for lunch and going back and sitting in that office again for the rest of the day. And I can't even, I'm like, it's a different human. I can't even imagine, because the one day that we go to the office, we have this lovely office on the first floor, and still like I get a little antsy because I'm like, we've been inside all day. We haven't like taken a breath of fresh air. And, I live across the street from the ocean, and on the back of my property is a state park. And so like I need like the salt air, the fresh air, the sound of the waves. And I think back to it, like there was so much in my life I didn't have that. I also had children, right? And so the play was taking them to the park, right? Or the play was seeing them play a sport or whatever it might be. Now they're all adults. And so that's why 2 weeks vacation worked, right? And when I even look at vacation, like I spent a lot of vacation, almost checkbox, right? Like I did this. Now I'm like, now I just want to feel what it's like to be at a human pace and get to know what I like, right? Because I've spent so much of like making sure you were taken care of and you were taken care of, and you know, like everyone was, and I loved it. And I'm in a different place now, even to the point of the days are short right now. And I'm trying just to acknowledge that the days are short and like accept that, because I want to, right, keep going and have the energy. And why isn't the sun up at 9 o'clock, right? But it's not, right? It's the winter. And so we're supposed to be quieter and slower and more reflective, and acknowledging that and accepting it, is practice. It takes practice.
You mentioned heels. I have given a lot of thought to clothes. I have a love of clothes. My initial career plan was to have a career in fashion. But I remember very distinctly in law school when we were given some sort of guidebook around like, this is what you wear. And then I remember going to a networking event at a law firm, and the first person at the firm that I saw was someone wearing a wrap dress. And I was so confused because I'm like much less so now, but I historically was a serious rule follower. And the rules had said, you know, this kind of a suit, this color nail polish, these kind of heels, like that much detail. And then the first person I saw at the firm didn't align with that. And I didn't want to be wearing what I was wearing. I was so uncomfortable, but that's what I thought we were supposed to do. And I then spent many years not wearing stuff that felt good. And I'm so aware of the impact of comfort on how my brain functions. So you work from home most of the time. What are you wearing?
And how do you have on shorts? The way you I usually have on shorts and flip flops and like like something that looks like a jacket on top. So I have on long pants because it was cold this morning. Now I'm regretting that, but I'm barefoot.
Yeah. I say it's usually shorts or jeans and a button down or a t-shirt that's like, you know, some sort of style element to the top half, because we live on Zoom, right? It's statement earrings, shorts, and barefoot.
Necklace is
statement earrings with shorts and barefoot is my MO.
I like that. I like this group focused on barefoot.
Yes. Yes. Well, Ariella, you'll laugh at this, but when I started practicing law, I went up and visited my friend in Atlanta, and there was an Ann Taylor up there. There was not an Ann Taylor in Jacksonville at the time. And I bought all of these very cute pants, and I came back to work and wore them and was asked if I was doing a document review. Like the women partners in the firm believed that you must wear a skirt or a dress. And I was like, this is not my place. This is not a long-term place for me. No. I'm like, in my Ann Taylor pants? No.
When you got that feedback, did you understand in that moment, oh, this is not the right place for me, I should start figuring out what? Yeah.
No, I will say honestly, the bigger issue even at that time was like, I couldn't get my head around hours as the measure of success. I just I've spent this life of being in school and learning the material and getting the answers right and impressing the professor or teacher. And now you just want me to sit in my office and take as much time as, like, I don't get that. My brain doesn't work that way. It wants to get the solution fast. So you're like, if I get the solution fast, then I'm not going to get enough hours and you're not going to be happy. That was probably the first, like, I can't reconcile all of this. So
that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking back now at yourselves starting out in your career, if you could help yourselves understand what you now know about well-being and how you actually think about success and sort of your understanding of life at this point, what would you go back and tell yourselves?
I'll say it's funny that you made the comment about posting on social media, some of those stories, and I have posted some of those. And I don't love to talk about like family, but I have posted some of them just for the hope that someone will read it who is early in their career and understand that despite the fact that all of the messages they're getting is work as hard as you possibly can and sacrifice everything because that's the most important thing. If they can understand that they're going to be okay, that they can say no, that they can build healthy boundaries. I think, again, I've said this a couple times. I learned from Whitney. Whitney had like just incredible confidence. Like, no, I'm going to be a full human, and I am a full human, and work is going to fit in the parts around that, and I'm going to do it really well. So perpetuating that.
Whitney, did you feel like you had that confidence? Or where did that come from, and when did it?
We ask this all the time. Like, how did your parents raise you?
Yeah, it's unclear how I ended up the way I am, Ariella. I was born with an outsized dose of confidence, and I really am not sure why. No, I mean, I do think I grew up with parents who I saw choosing to live life differently, and kind of breaking out. My dad's parents were a sheriff and an OBGYN who was chief of staff at a hospital, right? They were living a very like high powered life. And my mom and dad moved out to the family's lake house and we're like, yeah, we're going to do the small town thing. And just a very different pace and different choices. And I had exposure to kind of all the sides of that family in a way that showed me that it really was okay to choose differently. And so I think, in retrospect, I think that's a big part of it, but I still would go back and tell myself much more explicitly. Like, I think I inherently knew that, like, it was okay to make choices differently, and that, that I did have a right and a responsibility to choose my own adventure and choose my own outcomes. And responsibility, like if I didn't like how things were going, that it's up to me to change that. But I think if I had to go back and tell myself something kind of early career, I think it would really be like, you do get to design the way that you work. You get to design your outcomes. And yes, there are things in life that happen that you didn't choose, but there's a lot you can choose and a lot you can design for. And it may not be perfect, but you can be iterating toward it in a really cool way, honestly, in a really powerful way, and have a lot of agency over your life. And I probably would have benefited from more, planful thinking in that way earlier in my career. I had some lucky breaks that put me in the right places that helped me to navigate to, the life I have today, which is amazing. And I'm grateful for that. But I think that acknowledgement of like being mindful about the design of the life you want is super important. And you really can impact the outcomes if you care to think about it and be like, take action on it. Right. So and the other thing I would say is it is much more true than I would have ever realized that you can and probably should adjust that design and be willing to shift what outcomes you've said you want at different phases in your life. Right? I think I had this image of like, you got to get on one train and that's your train and you're going. And it's still hard for me to say, okay, yes, we decided to go do this thing. And now we want to shift and we're doing that intentionally. And, and we're choosing to let some energy be, wasted because we put it in that direction or whatever. But like, we want a different outcome in this phase. And so let's do that. So you think that, the iterative, being okay with an iterative process and an iterative life, right?
I love that. I love talking to you both. Whitney, you have a call in a minute. So
I do.
You do. I do too.
But I could keep going forever.
This is so good.
This is so much fun.
Really fun.
Oh, good. Well, maybe we'll do a part 3. I'm actually planning to do like a whole group podcast thing because I'd love to have like a bunch of people just do this and then we'll share it. And so I'll email you about that.
Love it.
Thank you so much. hop on your next call and I'll follow up by email. Thank you for spending
Have a great day.
You guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got a ton of value from this conversation and that you will check out the links in the description to learn more about the guest and the Wellness Esquire. And I hope you take even just 1 minute to do something for yourself today. Maybe right now, drink more water, say no, call a friend, do something that makes you happy, have a 30-second dance party, find something to make you laugh. Also, be sure to subscribe and send the podcast to a colleague. And if we're not yet connected on LinkedIn, please fix that. I'd love to know you. See you next time.